Happy World Green Roof Day.
Happy World Green Roof Day.
I'm going to introduce you to some very special guests. Let me make sure we can actually see each other by unmaximizing this. There we
Yeah,
are. Now you should be able to see each other.
yeah.
Fantastic, excellent. I'm gonna try and press buttons while I do this. So I'm a kind of like a one man show where I have to play this theme tune and thing this theme tune. So apologies if my brain doesn't quite get it sometimes. But enough of the rambling. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining. This is Climate Action Live, the live show. So please don't be shy and post us your questions. I'm joined by two very special guests tonight, by Niall McAvoy. I hope I pronounced that just about right, Niall. And Chris Bridgman. And my co-host, Gavin Anderson. Hello, good evening, folks. How you doing?
How are you?
Fantastic. I'm going to dive right in and say today is World Green Roof Day. That's what we anchored this program on. Let's start by making some introductions. Who wants to go first? Shall we go alphabetically, or is somebody brave enough to give us an introduction to who they are?
I'll jump in. My name is Niall McAvoy. I work for Pritchard and Pritchard, a green roofer. I'm 12 years in experience with urban greening, primarily around living walls, but I speak on the benefits of green infrastructure. I try to hammer that message home to anyone who would listen.
Fantastic. And what company do you hail from? Because you're representing a well-known architecture firm today, to some extent, aren't you?
No, Pritchard and
No?
Pritchard.
Oh, Pritchard and Pritchard, yes.
Yes. So a green roofing company and soft landscaping living wall installer.
Cool. Sorry, I simplified it into architecture, which is a whole nother topic, I guess.
No worries.
Fantastic. Chris.
Yeah, hi everyone. So my name's Chris Bridgman. Similar to Niall, I'm a green roof specialist as well. We've actually worked closely together over the years on some really successful projects. I sit on the GROW board. So GROW is the Green Roof Organisation, which is the UK trade body for green roofing. I'm currently vice chair of that. And especially for today and World Green Roof Day, I'm actually one of the co-founders of World Green Roof Day. So it's a real pleasure to be here today. It's been quite a long day already, but there's some real exciting stuff going on and some amazing global celebrations about green roofs and roof gardens around the world.
Fantastic. Well, let's explore that a little bit in more detail then, Chris. What's the point, or what's the purpose? What's the purpose behind the World Green Roof Day? What made you start that?
Well, green roofs, I think it's quite a common misconception that green roofs are a new technology, and really they're not. And they've been around for thousands of years, and it is actually a huge global market. And I think the idea to start it was really to celebrate that and highlight that, last year, 62 countries took part in World Green Roof Day, sharing images, videos, and celebrating the day. And, this isn't just sort of sedum roofs or grass roofs. This is urban rooftop farms. This is, real accessible spaces, places for people and nature. And it's just a really, really good chance for everyone around the world to celebrate what a great thing they are on one day and try and channel all our efforts into really spreading and promoting all the multiple benefits of green roofs.
Fantastic. One of the questions I had, and I know I've skipped a slide that I wanted to share, which is this lovely one. I have a very general question. I might be somewhat ignorant to ask this, but what makes a green roof?
Well, I would say anything. A green roof can be anything from, as I say, a sedum roof, which sedum is an alpine succulent, so it's fairly low maintenance, which is called an extensive roof. And then that can go up to anything in terms of anything that you have on the ground, you can basically replicate on a rooftop. So trees, water features, landscaped areas, and they're referred to as intensive green roofs.
Wait a second. You can put Let me just make sure I got that right. You can put whole trees on a roof.
Absolutely, yeah. If the building's strong enough, and lots of examples of this in London and around the world, actual real intensive rooftop gardens. And yeah, Niall's experienced in installing a lot of those in the capital as well, aren't you?
Absolutely. If I could further that point, what makes a green roof, and what I'm about to say, I think I've probably said for years, it's design. Like, we look at urban greening and we look at how we can help mitigate certain issues such as air pollution, increase in biodiversity, increase in biophilia. I think a lot of good green roofs or good elements of green infrastructure comes down to design, and it comes down to the designer looking at the built environment and showing and demonstrating how the installation of such an item can improve the built environment. Because you can install a green roof, you could install it very poorly, and that green roof may not have a long longevity. But when we think about the actual factors which make up the green roof, and then we think about the environmental factors by choosing certain plants to increase certain elements of biodiversity, or certain plants like Chris said, to incorporate trees in. Yeah, if we had a wonderful strong roof to incorporate trees, we could put in the best carbon soaking trees or plants which are going to help mitigate particulate matter or increase biodiversity. But for me, and all elements of green infrastructure, including a green roof, if you can enjoy the space, like, you can create a living wall. My only issue with living walls is they're unattainable, as in they're on the side of a building. You don't physically enter that space. And I think where a green roof lends itself in so many more facets that you could actually go up and enjoy the space. So imagine if it was a workplace point of view, during lunchtime, staff could break out and look, we have this wonderful green rooftop area. So for me, what makes a good green roof is identifying what we want to achieve with that green roof, seeing how many benefits we can include, and if possible, and it's not always possible, can we incorporate humans into that equation?
And sometimes, leading on from what Niall said, you don't always know you're actually on a green roof or a roof garden. So if you've ever been to Canary Wharf in London, actually a huge part of the Canary Wharf estate is above the underground station, and that's all roof garden. And there's some huge, like 5 to 10 ton Metsequoia trees, up to 100 of those on this rooftop garden, and you don't actually know you're on it until it's either pointed out or you work out yourself that you're now underground and all of this is above you. So
hang on, it's been a while since I've been to Canary Wharf, so let me just recap, because I know Canary Wharf, like when you come up from the underground, and you've got the kind of clocks and the kind of, well, you've got the water and you've got the office building. So does that count technically as a roof then, because it is on top of the underground kind of station?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, I didn't realise that was all kind of. Yeah. Well, I guess it must be hollowed out to some extent. Gavin,
I've got a couple of questions. Fascinating introduction, and enjoying my education on roof gardens. So, what are the drivers today? So, why does somebody come to you and say, "I want a roof garden"? Is it an aesthetic thing? Is it for? Because I like the point of obviously staff being able to enjoy it in a well-being area, but I also take the point of putting staff on the top of a 12-story building might not also be the most practical thing. So what are the drivers? Why are people commissioning you to build roof gardens, and are they on the increase?
I would say definitely on the increase. I mean, I think the green roof market is growing around 17.5% a year. A big part of the drive is flood reduction. There's insulation, cooling of the buildings in the summer and insulation for the winter. You've got carbon sequestration. There's biodiversity net gain as well. So the list soon goes on, and it's when you start reeling out all of the benefits, you really understand that green roofs aren't 100% of the solution to any one problem, but they're definitely 50% of the solution to lots of problems. And if you add all those together, they actually become a really beneficial tool.
Yeah, I agree with everything which as Chris had said, but Grosvenor Estate, largest landowner in the world, they carried out a survey on two identical properties. For argument's sake, we'll call it Street A and Street B. Street A had access to trees, shrubs, plants, and nature. Street B did not. Street A will sell on average for 11.2% more than Street B. So even from a developer's point of view, if they even didn't care about the environment and all the wonderful things which green infrastructure can bring, from purely a return on investment by installing green roofs within a space can increase the property prices of that building. So if it's not biodiversity net gain, there may be a financial kickback for the developers. But what I'm seeing, and maybe Chris might agree, is where we were 10 years ago to where we are now, there's more people looking for greenery in the built environment, and especially coming from the public. And it has to be driven by the public, because once it's driven by the public, that affects the developers. When it affects the developers, it affects basically our type of companies in level of inquiry. And when level of inquiry are high, we start to know we're ticking a lot of green boxes.
I agree with Niall that people are definitely having it now more by choice rather than because they're being told to by planning or the authorities that they've got to have it. People actually want this and they're designing it in from the beginning, which really helps Niall and I to make sure that you can have a really sustainable green roof rather than just a box ticking exercise. Yeah.
How can they be retrofitted, basically? How easy is it to retrofit to? So if there's a small business or warehouse, can they approach this kind of thing?
Well, we're based in Milton Keynes, and Axel actually came and visited the roof. And what we've done in Milton Keynes in 2019, we actually mapped the retrofit potential of the green roofs in the now city of Milton Keynes, which is a great achievement for Milton Keynes. And the retrofit potential was the equivalent of 6 full-size football pitches. Wow. So we could tell from the map that all those roofs that had currently had paving or ballast on them could be replaced with a green roof alternative. And that's huge in terms of retrofit and huge in terms of that amount of real estate that could be turned into green space.
You need to have a word with the Parks Trust, because they're a big property owner in MK, because they own a number of office blocks in MK. So if you're not in touch with them, that would be a great one for...
Well, another thing in London, like grade 2 listed buildings, like they're practically untouchable for all elements of green infrastructure. Anything which has to be attached to the building, we can normally get away with a potted plant. But if you take City of Westminster, 11,000 grade 2 listed buildings. And from my research, the most likely thing to get planning will be a green roof which has less substrate than 120 mil. So we're looking at the sedum roof, and as long as it's below the parapet. But the only thing with grade 2 listed buildings is the structural strength of the roofs themselves. Yeah. So we'd have to have internal supports added to be able to support the weight of the green roof in tow. So for maybe Chris has different experiences than me, but when we think about green roofs for the bigger schemes, the bigger wildflower or the biodiverse green roofs, the podium type green roofs, primarily maybe on newer builds, and the building was designed to support the weight of the structure.
Yeah.
Now
Sorry, no, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just going to say that's a really good point, because on the Bletchley and Fenny Stratford Town Council that I'm a councillor of, we are looking at improving a really old building that we've now made our office, and it's got a kind of semi-attached kind of multifunctional hall, if you will, / bar, and we want to convert that. So one of the things we told the architects we were considering putting a green roof on. So one of the first phases we are going to undertake is, I hope I'm okay to say that, we are going to put some support in to make sure that in the future we can talk to people like yourselves and say, let's talk about the benefits of putting a green roof on that, and maybe do some more stuff up there. And it's an interesting one, because I don't think that particularly is a listed building or anything, but it is financially really interesting, because I'm part of the working group that looks at improving that building, and our aim is to make it kind of like a local town hall, if you will, and make it very accessible and get the whole community involved. Make it, from my own perspective, a bit of a showcase for sustainable technology. But the money this costs is a consideration. So I wanted to drill down and hear your experience of what are the cost impacts. I know we've just put a green roof on, I should say, the YMCA, and we were raising some money for that. I say we as in the community, in the green roof project in Milton Keynes was. But what for something like the YMCA, what's the size of this, and what's the costs involved, and how could one recoup those costs?
That's a really good question, and I think Gavin was talking about the Parks Trust, and the Parks Trust have got a really beautiful, well, it's a 40-year-old environmental centre at Linford Lakes, and they're actually renovating that to bring it up to Passive House standards, and that's had a green roof on it for 40 years.
Wow.
And we actually, the idea is to take off the green roof that's there now, but recreate that later on once the insulation's been put on. And there were samples done on the waterproof layer underneath the green roof that's been there for 40 years. And the people that came out said that the waterproof layer is actually in perfect condition, as if it was laid yesterday. So a green roof may be more initial cost right now, but it could mean that your roof lasts 2 or 3 times as long as it would if it didn't have a green roof on it. So long-term financial saving is quite huge from that point of view.
You mentioned about it helping with heating and cooling. Can you explain a little bit more? And also, presumably does that for all green roofs, or is it beyond a certain size of green roof there's benefits to heating and cooling?
No, well, I mean, if I can talk about the hackathon that Axel mentioned earlier. So lots of the data for green roofs actually comes from abroad, and there's very little been sort of tests and figures have come out of the UK. So when we had the hackathon at Saxon Court, the task for the weekend was to create sensors that could actually demonstrate the benefits of green roofs from a thermal insulation point of view. Yep. And the results were phenomenal. And I cannot tell you how much, the gratitude to everyone that took part in that hackathon, because the data that came out of it basically showed that the temperature underneath the green roof pretty much stayed constant day and night. Whereas next to it, there was another sensor that showed temperatures going up to 25 degrees in the day and down to sort of 5 degrees at night. So, underneath the green roof, we were staying around 12 to 13 degrees day and night. So it actually gave a really useful piece of data that could show what it's doing. But the issue we do have with green roofs and measuring thermal performance is the fluctuation and the change of water levels within the green roof. So you can't always get a fixed reading or, a fixed data point for that.
I won't go back over Chris's point, but when I worked with a previous company called Scottscape, and slightly off topic, they employed Sheffield University to carry out a thermal test on a living wall. Due to the heat island effect, we got a peak temperature on the brickwork of 45 degrees Celsius. Wow. Behind the living walls, it was 20 degrees. So you could deflect away 25 degrees or the surface temperature off the facade of the building. There was a study done in the States, I believe in Chicago, and they said that if the building was entirely covered in a green roof and a living wall, that the heating cost could be reduced up to 83%, which was a phenomenal basis. And then there's another process called evapotranspiration. It's where solar panels may be installed on the green roof, and the cooling transpiration act of the plants as they breathe out the moisture, it's a cooler air. And so if there's air conditioning units, they're sucking colder air into the air conditioning unit, so i.e. it's cheaper to run. Yeah. But if there's solar panels, it makes the solar panels run more efficiently because of this cooling practice. So again, it's more beneficial to the thermal properties of the building as well. So one point you mentioned earlier about the costs. the cost of a green roof versus the cost of another, you both focus primarily on the cost. When we start adding in all the other benefits which the green roof can bring, all the plants can bring, such as smarter run of your electricity, your solar panels, the thermal properties, noise attenuation, it does then you see a lot more value for money when we tick all those boxes.
Yeah. No, I must admit, it's been an absolute education for me so far.
It's education for me having Chris here.
Well, to be fair, Axel's point about my architecture, because in was it Milan, the Bosco Vertical?
Vertical.
Yeah. Which for me, yes, I love this is green, but I also just love the kind of the almost brutal marriage of kind of greenery with, because I do like a bit of brutalist architecture, and you can tell hiding underneath there's a bit of kind of heavy concrete going on. I love that. Inspiring. But I think, it would be interesting to see. I don't know, for buildings. So that building would be, how would you class that building? Because is that part wall, part roof, or?
They were actually terraces that were planted with trees. It's not a green wall, and it's not necessarily a green roof. It's very cleverly done, very well done, and a lot of the maintenance is done via abseiling. But so I wouldn't class that as either, actually.
It's a series of planters on balconies, just done to the extreme. Yeah, effectively.
So you touched on an interesting point there, maintenance. So if you have a green roof, I mean, obviously, yes, it rains, etc. But do you get up there with your lawnmower? How do you maintain your roof?
So Niall mentioned something earlier. He mentioned the word substrate, and that's what we call the growing medium. So you don't put soil, as we know it, topsoil from the garden on a green roof. It's actually an engineered growing medium. And there's a few reasons for that. One, it's lower in organic content, so it doesn't grow as quick as your garden. So you're not up there trimming it like your back garden every fortnight. It's low in organic content from a fire risk point of view. So if it caught fire, then it wouldn't burn. It would smolder for a long time. But by that time, and please don't think there's often fires on green roofs, because there aren't. It's just a precaution.
Of course.
And also we need to make sure it's free draining. So from the picture you'll see in the background, you can see it looks like a lot of brick rubble, which it actually is. It's brick seconds, pumice, and leaker that actually helps it become free draining, but also stores a little bit of water as well. And we actually need to know what the fully saturated weight of this growing medium is from our weight calculation point of view. So that's why we call it substrate.
Yeah, but from a maintenance point of view, I have several green roofs to we maintain. Most frequently, you pull weeds. You pull weeds just, if we planted sedum, we don't want it completely covered by a naturally growing weed. So weeds get pulled, and maybe once a year we put out some slow release fertilizer just to give it a lift. If it comes to a wildflower meadow, obviously we want this soil kind of starved of nutrient, because wildflowers will grow better in a nutrient starved soil. But we would let the plants grow. We would trim it off in the winter time. We give it another tidy up in spring. But other than that, we just let it grow and do as it should do. And then when it comes to podium type green roofs, like you'd see in Canary Wharf or some of the big corporate buildings around the country, we would treat them as a regular garden, because you have trees, shrubs, as you would find anywhere else. So that the maintenance there would become as per a regular garden, probably without the lawnmower.
Yeah. So what about fruits and veg and things? I mean, are they green roofs just ornate, or can you actually grow things?
I'm
things.
a firm believer of, especially if it's a domestic building, because lots of people like their allotments. I was like, why can't we just have allotments on the rooftop? It can become a social space for many people. Actually, we speak of social spaces. People are 83% more likely to speak to another person in a green space as opposed to being on the street. Mm-hmm. So I do believe that, and it could be commercial buildings, it could be your office. I do believe there's a firm market there to have urban farms on the roof. It probably just for your own personal food intake. It probably wouldn't become a commercial outfit. But I do think as long as the roof can take the weight, we're not installing anything alien on that roof. You would install your raised beds. We'd have our planters, our trees, our shrubs, our water butts, maybe solar power to push the water around where it needs to be. But we're not reinventing the wheel here. It's the same product. It's the same process. It's just a different layout.
Yeah.
And Axel mentioned the YMCA earlier. That rooftop project, we're actually working with the social enterprise cafe run by the YMCA, and we're actually growing fruit and veg on the rooftop to be used within that cafe. And we're actually trying to encourage residents to, sort of become stewards of the green roof and actually start growing some stuff for their own consumption as well. So
Yeah.
This is really exciting. Plus, I think there's bees up there as well, isn't there?
Yeah, we've got 200,000 bees, and we produce honey and lip balm from them that is also going to be sold within the social enterprise cafe. But I think it's worth highlighting that it's actually the sort of the solitary and mason bees that we need to be creating habitats for. And although we do have 200,000 amazing farmed bees, as it were, we're also very conscious that we need to create habitats for the other 120 odd type of bees as well. So,
I'm desperately trying to think of bee-related puns, and I'm really coming up blank. But I want to know so much more about bees. But one thing I would like to do, if that's okay, Chris, we can pick this up separately, is maybe just come over and have a look once it's all bedded in a little bit more, and maybe do a little video to share with everybody to kind of go into that particular project, especially kind of the social enterprise bit behind it, if that's okay.
absolutely,
be very interesting. Sorry, Gavin, you wanted to come in again?
No, I was just because I'm always interested in the functionality of things, because if you can bring beauty and you can bring enjoyment and it can be functional and it can do something, I'm very much a kind of believer of that. I know it's just good because you were talking about the bees. Sorry, you want to make a statement?
Can I say something about bees?
Yeah.
So I was completely ignorant to this fact up until about 2 to 3 years ago. We talk about the decline in the bee population and people introducing hives and whatnot. I think London has the greatest amount of hives in the world, etc., etc., etc. Please do not do that. Please do not introduce hives. What you're doing is you're introducing competition into an already starved landscape. What we have to do is introduce habitats. Once we introduce habitats, nature will find its way. We don't need more competition in the landscape. Chris mentioned mason bees. He mentioned a solitary bee. A solitary bee has pollinated 60 to 70% of everything you've ever eaten in your entire life. The most important insect on this planet for our existence. We don't pay them back very nicely. So the only way we can pay them back is give them good habitats to live in. And there's other companies, Green Earth Habitats, they're based down in Devon. They make insect habitats, but they don't make insect habitats just out of regular wood. Certain insects like the smells of certain timbers. So they make the insect habitats out of those particular timbers, and then they're introduced. So we know they're actually being used on a day-to-day basis. But if there's anyone out there listening and you want bees, don't. Put in habitats. Bees will find their way. They'll make their homes. And if you're lucky, you can have your hives and whatnot then. But introduce more habitats, please.
And Niall and his team will do this. We put lots of dead wood and standing wood on our green roofs as well to try and attract all different types of insects and invertebrate up to the roof. And I was recently at Canary Wharf working with their gardening team to look at them maintaining their own green roofs. And we went up to level 26 of a building, and there were some log piles on the roof. And they're saying, well, what are they doing here? What was the benefit? And we lifted one up, and it was literally covered in wood lice and snails and everything you would imagine. They're like, how the hell did they get up here? And they do. Like Niall said, it will find a way. And it does.
Nature will find a way.
I won't say them. Sorry there, Axel. I'll just jump in very quickly. We're running trials. We're assisting with another company running trials. I won't take any credit. They are putting listening devices on their rooftops, and they're putting listening devices in green rooftops. So these listening devices, the algorithm detects the sounds of certain insects. So what they can do is they can then map the insects on the green roofs, but eventually you can bring that data to a developer because they will have to adhere to the biodiversity net gain, and they can listen and get the data from a barren roof, and then you can listen to the data of a fully greened roof, and then there's your arguments.
Wow. That is. Oh, thank you for interrupting me so rudely. No, that's fabulous, because these habitats are really important, and measuring data. Gathering data by measuring all of the things, like what we try to do with the MK Hackathon with Protospace and Poulieville in Saxon Court is. I think we once YMCA settled in, I think we might need a second part of that hackathon, and perhaps we can put some microphones on there and measure this. This sounds amazing. It's just there's so many data points, so many things that we don't think about even. I mean, we were a team of 20, 30 people, and we were looking at what sensors we put up on there, and especially having a baseline with an empty roof, like doing it before you put the green roof on, is something also that I suggested and said we need to. But whenever we do anything, I think it's very, very useful to draw a baseline, whether it's traffic calming or emission reductions or something grand like a green roof. We got to have data to back up our arguments and show people the evidence. As much as we like good stories, I think evidence, especially from a scientific perspective and public funding perspective, it speaks volumes more than people shouting. But I think I can't remember whether it was you now or Chris or both, perhaps. The public need to speak up. So I'm hoping that this special episode on green roofs goes some way of encouraging people, especially if you're local in Milton Keynes or in Bletchley, Fenny for that matter, get in touch with the council, get in touch with your councillor and say, what are you guys doing? Have you considered this? And I wanted to find a segue to the kind of second question I had, which is, again, quite broad, and it's, how can we make our cities greener? I know we talked about green roofs, and now you mentioned living walls, which we're going to circle back to very briefly, plug something amazing coming up that we're doing later in June. But maybe we can expand on this a little bit. What else can we do to make our cities greener? What's behind this urban greening thing that we touched on earlier?
I think bottom line, everything comes back to education. Because when I used to deliver my CPDs over the years, the most common answer or reply I get, I didn't know that was possible. So I think having podcasts like this and all the various and all any government incentives, getting information out there is going to be hugely important. But when people start demanding it, that's when the council must sit up and take notice. Anyway, how do we make them greener? Well, we have a full arsenal at our disposal. Maybe other people might contradict me, but I'm a firm believer. What we do, a green roof is only a method to allow greenery. A living wall is a glorified flower pot. It's a method to allow greenery. All these items are methods to allow greenery. But what it comes down to then is clever design, where we place these items. Now, even if you just take the road, how do we build roads? We build a road, we normally put a verge of grass, and we have our footpath. People walk along the footpath, they get covered in particulate matter, nitric oxide, sulfur dioxide, carbon, etc., etc. So we know that model doesn't work. The data shows, it's called the dispersion method of air pollution, that if you had a road, a hedge with a large leaf like a laurel or a griselinia or whatnot, and then you had your footpath, that the person walking on that footpath will probably be about 50% more protected from particulate matter because that hedge is there. So none of this is rocket science. And sometimes we just have to sit down and take stock of what we know and then where it can be applied. Like Chris, I'm sure, has done many CPDs like myself, and we are always talking about the benefits of green infrastructure. And not everything fits. A living wall is not applicable everywhere. A green roof is not applicable everywhere. Put in barriers on the side of roadsides aren't applicable everywhere. But they're applicable in a bloody hell of a lot of places. And when we install these items, See, all plants clean the air. All plants play some benefit, but some plants do it greater than others. So maybe if we leaned less against the aesthetic of certain items and we look more for the beneficial planting and try to incorporate more beneficial plants into those schemes, that's when you're going to see a much better change and a much better reaction from people. There is no easy way in the grand scheme of things. We've spent thousands of years building where we live, and we built everything because we thought this was the correct way to do it. And now all of a sudden scientists saying, actually, maybe we didn't get it right first time around. We have to retrofit, we have to backtrack a little bit, and we have to change that method. Now, the pluses are, when you look around the world and you're looking at new developments, and I'm going to just go to China's Forest City project, they wanted to build the world's first sustainable city. And if you see any renders or photographs of this city, the first thing you're going to take away is nature is given a ratio to the landscape. It's not shoehorned in afterwards. It's not retrofit. It's not cost engineered out. From day one, it's been designed in with purpose. And it's far more difficult for us to do this, but we have the knowledge. It's amazing the amount of people around the world look to the UK to see what's actually happening with the UK. But sometimes we have to take our own medicine, and we have to kind of push forward into greening where we can. But I'll always keep going back to that same little phrase, it's design. It's design can make it or break it. You could have a wonderful wildflower meadow such as this, but if you brought in all the wrong species, maybe it wouldn't be as powerful as it could be.
Yeah.
I'll just, I hope, what's this website? Willowbrookparkblogspot.com. I hope they don't mind me sharing this. I think this illustrates this a little bit, doesn't it? You've got roads, you've got your obligatory kind of green strip, and in this case, I don't know where this is, they've put in loads of wildflowers. Is that helpful to nature, or is this just, it looks nice, makes a nice picture? Is this useful?
Okay, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, without identifying each species relevant to that area. Here's another way to look at this. Since 1930, the UK has lost 97% of all wildflower meadow. So in less than 100 years, we've nearly eradicated 100%. Wow. So every item, like one living wall isn't going to change the world. One green roof isn't going to change the world. It's the one tree isn't the forest. It's the collective effort. And there's so many dead spaces around the country. In between two buildings, we have a little triangle of land. There's just a bit of scrappy grass on it. That someone comes out every 2 weeks and push a lawnmower over it. Why not turn it to a wildflower meadow? Don't spend money maintaining it. You just go there once a year, twice a year with a strimmer and just remove it. So is that one individual picture which you show me beneficial? Maybe. Is 1,000 of those pictures put together beneficial? Absolutely. So I think we have to think about the grand scheme of things. And certain people might say, hey, why would I even bother putting a green roof on my little shed? It's not going to change the world. It won't, but it will go one hell of a way collectively to change the world.
That's a great point now, and I completely agree. We had this quite often, didn't we, Gavin, in our shows previously, where we said, in fact, we have a whole episode on the little things. I think it's episode 3, without looking at the list. It's, every little helps, and taking a slightly grander view of a whole part of a city that we know are. If I look at Bletchley and Fanny Stratford, just because that's local to me, other areas exist, so your mileage may vary, but we are just we've voted as a council to take back control over our green spaces and bring that back in house. So we're going to employ people, we're going to have our own equipment, and we're going to make our own decisions on how we're looking after our green spaces. What would you and Chris say we should watch out for? What are like the top 3 kind of things we should be doing? So stop cutting down grass and put more wildflowers in is one thing I'm kind of taking away.
I think from my point of view, it's definitely an education thing, because the photo you showed of those beautiful wildflowers did look beautiful, but in reality, it's only going to look like that for 2 or 3 months of the year, and the rest of the time, yeah. Oh, sorry to say, yeah. But
You ruined an entire worldview now.
The whole Verge argument, where is it, do we cut it or don't we? And then when we don't, people think it's just a money-saving thing, it's been missed. But when there's a sign there to say, look, we're not cutting this grass, we're leaving it for bees, people think, oh, yeah, okay, that's fine, I'll buy it, that's fine, I get it, and I agree.
Mm.
But if you don't let people know that, they just think it's been missed. So when we do green roofs, I always say, look, you can have a wildflower roof by all means, but it's not going to be a poppy field all year round, and when we do this in commercial buildings, I always say, please, let's have an interpretation panel to say, look, this might actually look like a scrubland for part of the year, but for biodiversity and nature, that's absolutely perfect. And people then do buy into it and agree with it. So I would always say, yeah, just as long as your residents and the people in the parish know that's what you're doing, I think you will get support from it.
Signs. Gotcha. No, that's a really good point. And we had this where quite often Milton Keynes Council seems to forget, or sorry, the people that are hired to look after it, I should say, not pointing blame anyway, but it looks uncapped and people are complaining about it, and then you say, well, actually you shouldn't cut it because we're trying to encourage nature and insects, etc. And they say, well, it just looks uncapped, can't you do something better? And I think this trim the edges and then actually make an effort, perhaps like you said, to put in some actual useful natural elements, whether it's a particular type of tree or shrubbery or wildflowers, but actually putting a sign there that says that. I remember when I went to Cranfield University a few years back, we had the green working group. I don't know, sorry folks, I know you're probably tuned in as well, so apologies for not remembering the name, but there's a whole group at Cranfield who do amazing things with green spaces. And one of the things, is they'd taken parts of the footpath where you had patches of green grass and that just got mowed every few weeks. And they said, no, stop, we'll seed, wonderful flower mix, and we put signs on there. And that is actually such a good point, Chris. The sign is what made me stop and consider what they've done. Whereas otherwise, it was just like, oh, that will look nice on my Insta this morning together with my cafe latte or whatever I was drinking at the time. So, yeah, I think that's awesome. Sorry, I was just accelerated by a comment there that didn't make sense. But somebody just saying, hello. I'm not going to attempt to pronounce their name, but thank you. Wow, you guys are discussing my design project. Cool. It'll be interesting to see what design project this comment refers to, so let me know in the chat.
I've got another question.
Sorry, say that again, Gavin.
No, I was just got another question for the guys, because I think we've got to have favourite installation and why. One from each of you. Favorite installation and why. It might have just been the impact, it might have been the beauty, it might have been what it did to a situation.
Okay. See, you've torn me between two. One we did not install, but it's very local to me. Yeah. And that's kind of what I want to talk about. I can talk about a different one which we did install. It's Berkeley Homes, Kidbrooke Village.
Okay.
So if you cast your mind back to a new apartment complex maybe 20 years ago, and you went into the car park and there'd be a nice manicured lawn, there'd be topiary trees with little bedding plants underneath, and everything looks really pretty and beautiful and everything has its place. That was 20 years ago, and that's what people expected. And this is where people's perceptions are changing. If you come up to Berkeley Homes, Kidbrooke Village, you see this wonderful wildflower meadow, and it's all undulating up and down. There's a lovely pond inside. It trickles down like a waterfall, all this really wild planting. And if you walk there on a nice summer's day and you see the kids skipping through a wildflower meadow, and like there's flowers up to their waist, it's wonderful. Like aesthetic value of this, let alone all the wonderful environmental impacts it brings, but even from the aesthetic value of just having these kids playing this wonderful meadow, like that ticks a lot of boxes for me. From one of my favorite projects, which with Pritchard and Pritchard, was a project down Plough Lane in Wimbledon, where they installed 26 roofs and 4 podiums. But this was UK's largest blue roof. So what it does, as the rain falls, it percolates through the system. The blue roof can retain up to 1 million litres of water. There's a slow release valve at the drain, and it releases water back to the drainage at what they call the greenfield rate. And the greenfield rate is basically, if you poured water on a field, how long it takes to percolate through all the different levels of substrate before it hits the water table that gets taken away. And this was done as a sustainable, urban sustainable drainage scheme. Now, along with having all those wonderful wildflower roofs, again, bringing native species, grasses, all biodiverse, log piles, in increased biodiversity. 15 of those roofs have solar panels, because that's going to work well with the green roof, because that evapotranspiration. We have 4 podiums, so people can go out and enjoy the space. So let alone you in a garden, you've got this view starting out across Wimbledon. So you're starting to tick box after box after box. Sustainable drainage brings biodiversity, becomes a space to enhance biodiversity, incorporates solar panels, and like tick, 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 tick. So that's why I like that. I think it's a well thought out scheme. It was Galliard Homes, it was a Kingsley roofing scheme, and we installed the green roof, blue roof elements of that.
Amazing. What about you, Chris? What's your favourite one?
Probably for me, Gavin, my favourite is Noah's Ark Children's Hospice, which is down in Enfield, and it was a brand new hospice that was built 3 years ago. All the money was raised outside of government, so it was all privately money brought together to do it. And actually, the construction industry came together and donated lots of the materials to build the actual hospice itself. And we donated lots of time, and we've actually got an ongoing relationship where we're maintaining their green roofs for free for the hospice. And what's beautiful about this project is it's a bio-solar roof. So like we've already discussed, it's green roof and solar panels together. But the beauty of a bio-solar roof is it's actually the weight of the green roof that's holding all the solar panels in place. So you don't actually have to drill in or penetrate into the roof deck itself. So the green roof and the solar panels on the hospice actually produce all the power for the hospice, which is huge money saving for them. But what's really nice is with our ongoing relationship, we actually put nature cameras up on the roof, and we've got some iPads that the sick and dying children can actually look at the nature that's going on above their heads without actually having to get out of the beds, which they can't, unfortunately.
That was one of the things I was going to ask you about earlier, the nature element of the roofs, because we talked about joy, personal enjoyment, my spaces, etc. And we've talked about the bugs, and we've talked about piles of logs, etc. If you have a green roof, what might be living on your roof, or what might you encourage to live on your roof?
Well, Niall and I both know a chap called Dusty Gedge really well, and he's the European president of Green Roofs. And it was about 20 years ago he actually reintroduced the idea of green roofs back into the UK. And in London, through a lot of his hard work, there's actually now over 1.5 million square meters of green roof. And that green roof, we believe, actually helped the Black Red start reintroduce numbers. It was almost virtually extinct, and green roofs and brown roofs in London have actually helped increase those numbers, and they're now in their high numbers again. So yeah, definitely birds, as we said earlier, bees, didn't we, Niall, as well? And lots of different bits and pieces going on.
Well, it was years ago, Gavin, we did a living wall to Hyde Park. It was only small, but we planted it with seeds, native wildflower seeds. And I was maintaining that wall, and there was a frog in the wall. I was like, flipping hell, frogs don't climb walls. But suddenly, and this is what I explain to everyone, what we do is we put the source in, the correct plants. It attracts the insects, but then the insects attract the predators, the bats, the birds, the frogs, the whatnot, and then they bring their own predators. So it's not unlikely we're going to have a diverse foxes and hedgehogs up on our roof. But again, it's all part of that big circle of life that we put in the sources everywhere, increase the insect levels, and then that brings the birds, the bats, etc. Like a bat will eat 3,000 bugs in one night. So we need
That's a good. Just going on from the bats conversation, I was up at Coventry University last week, and they've got their most sustainable building there. And the last planning condition was it must have a green roof because there's 16 bats in the area. And on last count, there's now 152 bats, and that was because they're all in and around the green roof. So definitely a good call from that point of view, I think.
Good stuff.
So it sounds like the only kind of challenge, or not challenge, the hurdle to overcome, I guess, is the investment. Because I haven't heard anything that's a downside so far, whether you're doing it for, employment well-being or human well-being, let's say, or nature well-being, or for, heating, cooling, efficiencies, sustainability from a building point of view. I don't hear many kind of downsides. So I guess, it's, and also I guess the investment, I mean, to your point earlier, now, if you prove the point to developers, or bless our developers, but they are run by, pound signs. So if you actually show, I guess that there's a benefit to it.
They are run by pound signs. But you have to understand, you, Gavin, are an element of nature.
Oh yeah.
We all are.
Yeah.
But we always think nature is something else. It's trees, lions, tigers, fish, whatever the case. And very few people include themselves in that situation, as part of it. And, that's when our homes or towns or cities or schools should reflect what we are, to have that change in people's perception. It is cost. Maybe Chris has a different point of view. Maybe I live in some fantasy land. I don't understand why green infrastructure isn't at the forefront of people's minds, considering all the environmental issues we face, considering you don't take my word on any of this. You just have to do a quick Google search. You will find university white paper after white paper after white paper talking about solar power with green roofs, talking about the thermal properties. We didn't even talk about the biophilic effects and how it affects your nervous system. We talk about the return on investment. There's so many benefits. It's bizarre that they're not specified to every roof, everywhere. But maybe I'm just naive in my thinking.
No, it's all, I mean, it can, because on the subject of the whole kind of measurement thing and how, can you get carbon credits? Do any of these projects qualify for carbon credits? I know it must be quite difficult because normally to qualify for a carbon credit, you must have a physical you measure the before and the after, you create a standard. This is for bamboo, this is for mangoes, this is for seaweed. And I guess your projects, no two are probably the same. So can it?
Maybe Chris is better answered on this one. I wouldn't know the legality around what I'm about to say per se, but there are programs called iTrees and TriTrees. Basically, during university studies, they would have put in a value to the carbon capture of a particular tree. So it has a value. A silver birch has a value. So let's say we installed a roof, a big, strong podium roof, and we installed a mini forest on it. Once we know the correct species you're in, you can put that data into this iTrees program, and then it can give you out basically a return on your carbon capture. However, you have to understand, all of this was done under lab conditions. It was all done in the big forest in Germany, and all these trees were given numbers. So what we would measure here in the UK today would not strictly, but it is a guideline. And the only real way to measure carbon sequestration is to do multiple year study beforehand, install, and then test afterwards. Then you'll have very specific data. But unfortunately, not many people seem to do that. It's probably a big cost to be doing it. That would have to be government led.
Well, I mean, at the moment we have Gold Standard and Vera. I mean, for me, are about the only two carbon standards, and they're revised regularly because a carbon credit that's from 2008 is very different from 2005. Is very different from 2016 to where we're kind of working today.
Yeah.
But no, because obviously in the future, not in the future, in a minute, hopefully, we're seeing taxations being brought in Canada. I think we're going to be pioneering it for forcing companies to offset. And actually, one of my friends was telling me about the New York State has introduced a bio levy for the bio impact of all new buildings. I think it's been put forward, or it's been proposed to try and kind of encourage more environmentally aware kind of buildings. And it'll be fascinating to see, obviously the green roofs and green walls being involved for this.
Well, we'll have biodiversity net gain in the UK, which a developer must leave the site at least 10% better off than once they found it in terms of biodiversity. So for developers who maybe wanted to maximize their plot of land, the only free space available is on the side of your building, i.e. a living wall and a green roof. So for maybe developers who never gave much thought to green infrastructure, their hand has now been turned that you have to start including these elements of green. And then you'll have the urban greening factor as well, based in London as it stands. But each element of urban greening will be giving a point. And for planning permission, developers are going to want to acquire as many points as possible. So that will then encourage more green infrastructure going forward.
And on the back of that, there's also, if you can't leave the site 10% better, as Niall said, there's actually biodiversity offsetting. So there's obviously going to be money going to local governments, and it would be great if they could then say, well, actually, let's use this money to help fund some green roofs, because the UK, we're really far behind compared to the rest of the world on the amount of green roofs that we've got. So London's got 1.5 million square meters of green roof, but that's over 20 years. Germany are installing 8 million square meters every year. So you can see we're behind the curve, but we're the only ones that don't have any subsidies for green roofs. A lot of these other countries do. So maybe, and I'd love for any government or local council to actually say, well, let's use our pot of biodiversity offsetting money to actually help fund some of these, wasted and unused roofs become green.
I would love to look into that. And it's a good point, Chris. Something that I had as a note, in fact, to a last planning meeting, which was to look at what pots of money might be available for us as a council to tap into and say, what can we do? And is there something that we can perhaps even communicate to the local businesses, or work with MKC and improve as part of the town regeneration plans and that kind of stuff. We are running very quickly out of time, and I just wanted to make sure that the one person who's actually sent us a question live during the show gets a minute for you guys to have a look at it. So I'm not going to attempt to pronounce your name, mate, but thank you so much for tuning in. Here's the question. I'll just give you a second to read that.
Definitely one for Niall, I would say.
Yeah. I was looking at this question for the last 10 minutes.
All right.
I think, you can install a living wall on a gate. They've been done before, and they can move in and out. But I think what this man's asking, or lady is asking, as the plants grow, can it move? And the answer is no. Simply because a living wall, it's a known area, it's a known module. We plant our plants into it. But even if the modules could move in some way, we have our irrigation lines. So you've got all these items which cannot be moved from their fixed abode. Now, plants can grow out, and you can make the modules bigger, smaller, etc., to incorporate a larger species of plant. Scottscape made modifications to their living wall system, and they can incorporate small trees and large shrubs into it as necessary. But what I'm taking from this question is, if you had your plants and they grew, can it move away? I would say no, because the modules are fixed, the irrigation is fixed. So it's not possible with today's technology. We can move them, but the whole body would move, either up or down or in or out, etc., but not individual plants as part of that particular scheme.
Fantastic. Thank you, Niall, and thank you for a Twitch viewer for posting the first live question I think we ever had on the show. I'm always encouraging people to do so, but they're doing it mostly by email. So don't be shy. Do say hi. And I'm going to use the last 20 seconds off official runtime. I will overrun very slightly today. To thank our guests. Now, Chris, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's been absolutely amazing. Like I said before we started this program, we could probably talk about this topic until the cows come home. And I would love to do that. And I'm going to pick up with Chris and Hannah about the YMCA Green Roof. Let me know in the comments or via social media if you want to see that. And I'm going to have a very special announcement. Let me see if I can push the right buttons here. There we go. On the 20th of June, which is 2 weeks from now, we are talking about living walls. Or not we, but specifically now, you're going to give an online talk about living walls and other such things. We touched on it just now. We talked about blue roofs as well. We talked about hedges and all of those things. This is going into that a bit further, and it's going to be a presentation format. Now, I twisted your arm and you agreed to it, so you can't check it out. Thank you so much for joining, for making that happen. Yeah. Tickets will be released after this show tomorrow, and there'll be links in the description below. So do check the website, do check our social media. Tickets are free, they're not limited. It's an online event. We'll stream live. Chris and Gavin, any last final words you like to leave us with tonight?
For me, it's been quite very knowledgeable. Both of you. It's been the bee thing. I must admit, I live in the country. I've rewilded a bit of my garden, and the beehive was on. I am now educated about that, so I'm going to go back to the drawing board on that. But I do have my.
Don't kill the bees. If you have the bees already, let them live. Gavin.
It's because Chris was saying education, and he's right, because Muppets like me would have gone, oh, I'm going to do something good and buy a beehive, much rather than actually look into the correct plants for the area that I actually live in and the correct soil that they should actually be in. So. It's been a delight, gentlemen, for both of you. And I think I think I only know one person about as passionate as Niall about the planet as a living organism. And he's an amazing round the world yachtsman that I am going to introduce you to, then probably not be on that call. I think I'd duck at that point. But the two of you, I love the way you talk about the interconnection, because so many people talk about the bits that we can do, but actually all the bits are connected. And the first time I met this yachtsman, he told me about the amount of active carbon fine. I hear about you sequestering carbon. Let me tell you about how much carbon we're missing. Biocarbon. And I think you and him would get on well. So, gentlemen, it's been an absolute education, and I count me educated. I will go out and take some positive action out of it. It's been a joy to meet you.
I'd say do attend Niall's talk. We've co-presented together before, and I've been to 3 or 4 of his presentations, and they've never been the same, and they're always really, really interesting. So it'll be a good session to go to for anyone. Again, thanks everyone for celebrating World Green Roof Day. Green roofs, the sky is the limit. I didn't want to put that pun in there, but I've done it. But yeah, let's carry on celebrating. There's a hashtag for today, which is hashtag WGRD 2022. So there's still time to celebrate. And thanks for inviting me along to talk to you guys tonight. It's been really, really good.
I will crack open a bottle of beer, or sustainably brewed craft beer, to celebrate.
Will do.
I would like to say, well, first of all, thanks for giving me this opportunity. For anyone out there listening, people are going to say, what can I do? And sometimes you're not in a position to do anything per se. Maybe you don't have land, you don't have a roof which you have permission to green, or a living wall, etc. But what you can do is express interest. You could ring the council and just say, what are you doing? What are you doing in my neighbourhood? Imagine if thousands of people rang the council on various days and they goes, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? It is going to show that the people care. because not every it's all well and good for us to talk about planting trees, plant this, plant that. Some people are financially tied or for other reasons just cannot do what they want. But put pressure on the council. If they know enough people want it, it will happen. That's my bit.
That's a great way to end.
CPD, no pressure.
No, that's exactly what I'm telling my neighbours that I'm representing here in Fenny, and everybody else who wants to listen to it, and say, let us know. You know, I have a 60-second survey on my website to say to people, fill that out. Let me know what I can do for you. And yeah, exactly. People power, or power to the people. Well, we already have the power. We just need to use it. And the easiest thing in the world is to pick up the phone, or ideally drop us an email with details. And the more of you do that, the more we can drive that change forward. And on that bombshell, and thank you for the extra 5 minutes, everybody. You've been absolutely wonderful. Celebrate Green Roof Day wherever you are. Plant something, look after our environment, have a very nice rest of whatever part of the day it is, wherever you are. And I'll see you on the 20th, or otherwise every first Monday of the month. See you later.
Thanks, everyone.